So we'll start with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
The recording has started.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udhirayet. Shanvatam sukatha krishna punyashavana kirtanam nidyantastu bhadrani vidunoti sursatam. Nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Namo Vishwabadaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschata Deshatarane. Okay. Hare Krishna. So last time we ended our discussion on the first canto, first chapter, 17th verse. So we will resume from the 18th verse. And when we discuss the verse a little bit more, then I'll also do a quick recap for the sake of continuity. So verse 18. Atha kya hai hare dhiman avtar kata shubha leela vidhata swairam ishvarasyatma mayaya. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by His internal powers. So, quick recap that so far in the first chapter, we went through the first three Mangalacharan verses. Then we went through a set of verses which was kind of like setting up the scene where the sages glorified Sutta Goswami, brought forward his qualities that made him a suitable speaker. And following that, they kind of introduced the different key players that will play out in the Bhagavatam. So they introduced Srila Vyasadeva. Krishna was obviously introduced in the first verse. They introduced the holy name, introduced a devotee association, Vaishnav Sangh. And with the stage kind of more or less set, they begin to ask the questions to Sutta Goswami, which Sutta Goswami will answer most of them in the next two chapters. But then these questions kind of form the basis of the subsequent chapters or the cantos in the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam, as we discussed, is basically a series of questions and answers, and subsequent questions are in the context of the answers to the previous questions. So these are the first set of 6 questions that the sages are asking, and they kind of form the broad outline of the Bhagavatam. So this verse is essentially the 5th question that the sages have asked. And as we go down a little bit, I'll speak about the previous questions. We'll talk about all the 6 questions. So the sages are asking of Sutta Goswami to talk about the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead. So of the previous 4 questions that the sages have asked, 2 of them are for people in general. So the questions, if you remember, are that what is the ultimate shreyas? What is something that is for the ultimate benefit of people? What is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. So these questions were more for general people, and then they ask questions that are more towards the devotees. What is the purpose for which Krishna came as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki? So these are questions that are relevant to Krishna, which makes them more relevant to the devotees. So this question is the last four questions are specific to the context of Krishna and the devotees. So the earlier two questions kind of also establish the framework of the subsequent questions and answers. So they have asked that, give us the essence of the scriptures. Why are they asking that? Because people are firstly not qualified to read the scriptures. They don't have the understanding, the guidance. They don't have the time to read it. So they're asking Sutta to just give us the essence of the scriptures. Then they ask that, what is the highest purpose that the Vedas present? Again, this is so that the reader does not have to spend a lot of time doing the analysis. So essentially, they are asking for something that is ready-made, quickly served, and easy to consume. So this question is essentially asking about Krishna's Leela avatars. So the previous question was about Krishna's Purusha avatars. That was the question we did last time, that they were asking for the incarnations of Krishna that are active in the creation of the material world. So these are the Vishnu avatars that come and play when the material world is created. This question is specifically for Leela avatars, pastime incarnation. And later on in the Bhagavatam, we'll have a more detailed study about the incarnations of Krishna, the classifications, the basic of classifications. But sufficient to say that for now, they're asking for two kinds of incarnations, the Purusha avatars and Leela avatars. So buried in this question is also the eagerness of the sages to hear this. And then that is giving us a sense of what would make Srimad Bhagavatam accessible to us. So we also need to demonstrate the same kind of eagerness to hear the glories and the pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the sages, as we discussed, they have glorified the holy name, they have glorified association of the devotees, they have glorified Krishna Katha. So they've kind of set the stage, and they've set the stage for us that if we were to understand the answers that Sutta Goswami and Sukadeva Goswami have to give, then this is the recommended parameters that we should be chanting to have access to the glories of the holy name. We should have a mood of service towards devotees. We should be having good devotee association, and we should have the Shushurushu Shadadanascha. We should have the eagerness and the faith to listen to Krishna Katha. So Krishna performs many adventures that by normal stretch of imagination is difficult to comprehend. That he picks up the entire earth and puts it into from the bottom of an ocean. Just using his nails, he kills his enemies. He marries 16,108 wives, and he expands to become a husband dedicated to each one of those wives. So who other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead can do such wonderful leelas, and the sages are anxious to hear about it. So Jiva Goswami in the Krishna Sandarbha, he says that this is an Uchet 70. So he says that the sages are requesting Avatar Katha. They're requesting Avatar Katha of Sri Krishnasya. So Sri Krishnasya means of Sri Krishna. So they're requesting to hear about the pastimes of the various incarnations. So avatar refers to Purush avatars, which was asked in the previous verse. It refers to Leela avatars, which is asked in this verse. It also refers to Guna avatars. Guna avatars are basically Lord Brahma in the mode of passion, Lord Vishnu in the mode of goodness, Lord Shiva in the mode of ignorance. Those have not been asked, have been not asked so far. So practically the entire Srimad Bhagavatam will be an answer to these questions. But specifically in the third chapter of the first canto, Sukadeva Goswami, he will enunciate the prominent Leela avatars from verse 6 to 29. And then he ends up with saying that, O Brahmanas, the incarnation of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets from the inexhaustible source of water. So one should not think that the list that Sutta Goswami enunciates in from 136 to 1329 are by any means exhaustive or comprehensive, because he's saying there are millions of incarnation, but he talks about the prominent incarnations. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, for creation, maintenance and destruction of the material world, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead appears in many thousands of forms of incarnation. And the specific adventures found in those transcendental forms are all auspicious. But those who are present during such activities and those who hear the transcendental narration of such activities are benefited. So Prabhupada is giving us a clue as to why are these sages asking about these incarnations. Because those who are present while these pastimes are happening, or those who hear about these pastimes, are benefited. So it is for our ultimate spiritual benefit that the sages are asking, and they also have interest. So, so for those of you who have had young children, well, children are young, but when they were younger, when they were infants, or who have friends, then the mothers, they can talk forever about their children. They will talk that my child has a new tooth growing, or my child likes milk but does not like this, or my child throws tantrums. Yeah, you know, one of the things that one has to be careful, at least at work, is talking to a new mother about the child. And the mother will go on and on about the child. You may not be that interested. But the reason the mother cannot even imagine that somebody else would not be interested, because she's completely in love with her child. The child is the most important person in her life. So for her, everything that the child does is something that is worth sharing. That my son took the first step and he stumbled and then he got up and took again, and goes on and on and on, because it is a source of so much pleasure to her because of her love for the child. So in the same way, for devotees, pastimes of Krishna are saturated with pleasure. For non-devotees, they may feel that they may feel bored or disconnected, or they may say, "Yeah, I heard it." But for devotees, they're ever fresh, and we, as we see that different acharyas, they will even write more and more details about pastimes, like the Damodar Katha. There are some acharyas that have written so much of details about what was the Manorath, what was going on in the mind of Yashoda, what was going on in the mind of Krishna, what happened when he ran, how many steps did the Yashoda Maya have to take before she was able to catch hold of Krishna, what was the different position in which they were running with each other. And you would think that so much of details, but it is just a symptom of their interest that is coming out of their love. So another point that's made over here is that if you look at the verse, then the the term Atma Maya is used to describe the execution of this pastimes. Atma Maya means under his own personal energy. So the sages, they also want to make this point that these pastimes, these leelas that Krishna is performing, he's not forced to perform them. The leelas, in the leela, you will see that Krishna may be taking birth of a mother and a father, like Vasudeva or Yashoda. You might see a leela in which Krishna is fighting with somebody. He's getting angry, or he leaves his body. So some people, when they look at it, they make the mistake that they think that just like I took birth, Krishna took birth. Just like I will die, Krishna dies. Just like I married, Krishna married. But the difference is that for Krishna, they are Atma Maya. They are performed under the influence of his own internal potency, which means they are fully spiritual and they are completely voluntary. So Leela means that one that somebody performs voluntarily and for their own pleasure. And even though Krishna is doing for the benefit of the devotees, but he's essentially doing it for his own pleasure, because that is what gives him pleasure, to redeem the devotees who have fallen into this samsara sagar. Okay, so we will go to the next verse. Good. Vayam tu na vitrpaya vitrpayama uttama shloke vikrame yachanvatatam rasa jnanam. Swadu swadu pade pade. Not really sure how these lines are coming. Okay, so there's somebody who is drawing. Let me see. Okay. Translation: we never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationship with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. So, why do the sages never tire of hearing? Why do the mothers never tire of speaking about their children or hearing about their children? That is because of the taste that they have. That is because of the love that they have. So they have the taste for Krishna Katha. They have the taste for transcendence. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he explains the difference between spiritual and mundane topics. So he says mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic. Inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding the transcendental subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. So the sages are never satiated because they have developed a taste of hearing Krishna Katha. So how come we get tired? Why don't we have the same taste that the sages have? The sages are willing to sit for 1,000 years and uninterruptedly hear Krishna Katha. What can we do to develop that kind of a taste? So in Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes our situation. He says, such am I and my sense of taste that I lick up bitter tasting, deceitful, profane gossip as if nectar, but remain apathetic to hearing the names, qualities and pastimes of the Lord. I am so fallen. When I start to hear about the Lord, I comfortably fall asleep. But at the chance for vulgar idle talk, my ears prick up and I become wide awake. In this way, I have always stained the assembly of devotees. So, out of humility, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is talking about himself, and he's obviously a very exalted devotee, but he's also putting it over there for us to relate to. That this is our situation. That when it comes to Krishna Katha, we fall asleep, or we have an upper limit, and after that we find it impossible to focus. But when it comes to Prajalpa, then we are very eager to do so. So this eagerness is, and we had discussed this in one of the earlier words, lolium, that this eagerness is a key quality that brings one closer to Krishna Katha and ultimately Krishna. If we don't have the natural eagerness, we can pretend to have that eagerness. And as we engage more and more in it, the quality will become more and more authentic. In the Bhagavatam, we see great personalities express this very strong eagerness, like Maitreya Rishi. So he was so eager to talk, and Vidura, so eager to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that it's quite possible that everything that Maitreya was telling Vidura had already heard, but he was still eager to hear. That's because it was relevant to Krishna. So when Krishna was this was in the 10th canto, when Krishna was in the ashram of his guru Sandipani Muni, then at the end of his education, which did not last very long, I think it lasted 64 days. So Krishna as Guru Dakshina, he found and returned the son of Sandipani Muni, who had been drowned in the ocean some time ago. And Sandipani Muni was so pleased by it, that he blessed Krishna. So in Krishna book, chapter 45, he says, "You are above all blessings." So he knows the position of Krishna. So he says, "You are above all blessing, yet it is my duty to bless you. I therefore give you the benediction that whatever you speak will remain as eternally fresh as the instructions of the Vedas. Your teachings will be honored not only within this universe or in this millennium, but in all places and ages, and will remain increasingly new and important." So Krishna, of course, did not need this benediction, but it's interesting that he inspired his Guru Maharaj to give this benediction, which is actually factual. Srila Prabhupada says that the nature of spiritual writings is that they never go stale. So you've all had this experience that you read the Bhagavad Gita and you read it again, and you'll have some new realizations. And then you read it again, you'll have some brand new set of realizations. Same verse, same purport, same you, but the difference is that it is still new. Because of Sandipani Muni's benediction, everything that Krishna spoke remains eternally fresh. The Bhagavad Gita was 5,000 years ago, but it's as relevant now as it was at that time. And it will be as relevant 5 million years from now. So Prabhupada writes, due to this benediction from his teacher, Lord Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is ever increasingly fresh and is renowned not only within this universe and our planets, but other universes also. So in the verse, the sages, they say, Uttam Shloke Vikrame. That we never hear of hearing the transcendental pastimes of Uttam Shloke Vikrame. So Uttam Shlok refers to Krishna. So it means that he who is glorified by transcendental prayers. It also means that he whose glories dispel ignorance or tamas. So, because the sages are sitting in the association of Uttam Shlok, so they're glorifying Krishna with choice poetry, but it's Krishna's nature also that when his glories are sounded, they dispel ignorance, they display tamas. So that is why. So the mode of the symptom of mode of ignorance is apathy, sleeping, laziness, disinterest. So the symptom of Krishna Uttam Shloka is that ignorance gets dissipated and we get energized and interested. So in the Bhagavatam 4, Canto 4, Chapter 30, verse 20, Krishna is here. He is speaking to the Prachetas after they finish their 10,000 year yajna underwater. So he says that always engaging in the activities of devotional service, devotees feel ever increasingly fresh and new in all their activities. The all-knower, the super soul within the heart of the devotee, makes everything increasingly fresh. This is known as the Brahman position by the advocates of the absolute truth. In such a liberated stage, Brahmabhuta, one is never bewildered, nor does one lament, nor does one become increasingly jubilant. This is due to the Brahmabhuta situation. So here Krishna is glorifying his devotees, and so initially Krishna Katha is the source of ever freshness. Now Krishna is bringing our attention to devotional service. Now Krishna Katha is also a form of devotional service, Shravana Kirtan, but Krishna is expanding that scope, and he's saying that any devotional service, whether it's Shravan, Kirtan, Smaran, Padya Sevan, Atma Nivedan, Dasya, any kind of devotional service that you do, it has this quality of being ever fresh. And we have experienced that. For pujaris who go onto the altar and they worship the deities over and over again, but every time you go on the altar, it's a new experience. So Narayani Mataji was sharing this with us in one of the class she gave here, that she was the head pujari in Calcutta temple for, I believe, 6 years. And she was not only the head pujari, she was the only pujari. So she said that right from Mangal Arti, the first Arti in the morning, all the way till Shayan Arti. So the 7 Artis, the 6 offerings, everything, she was the only person doing it. And then I asked her that, didn't it get tedious? And she said, yeah, it was physically tiring. But she said every time she went on the altar, it was a whole new experience. Oh, Krishna is there. Oh, now it is afternoon offering. So that is the nature of devotional service. So in the purport to this verse 4:30-20, Prabhupada says, a devotee is inspired by the super soul within the heart to advance in devotional service in a variety of ways. The devotee does not feel hackneyed or stereotyped, nor does he feel he is in a stagnant position. In the material world, if one engages in chanting a material name, he will feel tired after chanting a few times. So the same super soul. So remember in 1:1:17, we had said that how is it that a jiva becomes so immersed in the material world? How is it that he forgets his spiritual identity? And then we said that because there is a master director that is directing the whole play, that gives the jiva remembrance and forgetfulness. That is giving the jiva the desires through which they can enjoy as per their intrinsic propensities. And that is the super soul. Now this is the same super soul that is giving the jiva the desires to make devotional advancement. So what is the difference? The difference is, what is it that we want? If you want material enjoyment, the super soul is the perfect director. It's kind of like, which movie do you want? You want a scary movie? The super soul will show you a scary movie where you will sit terrified for the 2-3 hours that you sit in the hall. Or if you want to watch a funny movie, the super soul will take you there. So for devotees, the super soul is the one that creates this sense of newness. It creates this sense of variety, even though it may be the same thing. You may read the same verse. There are people who recite the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day. And every day that they recite it, they feel that they're reciting it anew. There is something new that comes out of it. And why? Because of the influence of the super soul. So another point that is important to note, and this is a little bit of I guess a commentary on a commentary, that when we spoke on 4:30:20, then Krishna talked about the Brahmabhuta platform. And from the Bhagavad Gita also, I'm sure you remember the verse on Brahmabhuta, 1854. Brahmabhuta prasanna atmana sochati na kankshati samaha sarva bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. So it talks about that a person situated in same description is given to in both cases to Brahmabhuta, that na sochati na kankshati. They don't want anything and they don't lament for anything. But important to note that this Brahmabhuta is not the Brahman platform. Why? Because of the context in which it is used. So in 1854, Krishna says, Mad Bhaktim Labate Param, that they are my pure devotional service. And similarly in 4:3:20, it says that always engaging in devotional service. So this is the Brahmabhuta platform that is attained as a result of performing devotional service. So what is an example of somebody that we know who has experienced this constant newness or this never being tired of spiritual service? And that is our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada's life has been documented, and then we see that 24 hours a day he was involved in some kind of service. That whether he was translating, whether he was lecturing, even when he was going for a walk, he would use that time to do Krishna Katha. And he was never tired. That there were times when Prabhupada was taking rest, and the disciple would come and say, somebody wants to come and talk to you. And then Prabhupada would immediately get up and say, yes. And then Prabhupada would preach. So that is Prabhupada's mood. And that is the mood that Prabhupada has put in his books also. That is the mood that we need to imbibe. And so in a letter Prabhupada's write, this is a letter he wrote in 1973, the instruction given in my books is supposed to be personal instruction. When we read the Bhagavad Gita as it is understood that we are receiving personal instructions of Krishna. No physical barrier is there in the case of spiritual affairs. So what does it mean, personal instructions? Personal instruction means that they're personalized to you based on your current situation. If you're happy, then the instructions are personalized to you in a happy frame of mind. If you're lamenting, if you're sad, that is the personal instruction. Now the instruction is the same. It's not that the Bhagavad Gita pages change. They're the same. But it's the super soul that gives us this realizations. These ever fresh realization. So Jiva Goswami, he explains that while the super soul is in everyone's heart, but in the heart of a devotee, he reveals himself as ever fresh, new and exciting. So a devotee is also experiencing the same symptoms by the process of bhakti, simply by the process of chanting. While the materialist may be performing so many externally variegated activities in this search for excitement, but they will forever remain bored and disillusioned. If one does not experience this newness in the chanting, reading, association, then it is a symptom that one is spiritually sick. So this is a heavy statement that Jiva Goswami makes, that if you are not experiencing this newness, if you're not experiencing this spark of interest when you read, it is a symptom that you are spiritually sick. And what happens if you're sick? You need to see a physician. And our physician is our Guru Maharaj. Our physician is the devotees that we associate with, and our physician is the Nama Prabhu. But the symptom Srila Goswami is clearly enunciating here, that if you do not experience newness in chanting, if you do not experience newness in reading, if you do not experience newness in associating with devotees, then you should know that your spiritual life is at risk. So I'll stop over here, see if there is any questions or comments. Any questions, comments, realizations that you would like to share? So there's a question. Super soul and mind. How can we differentiate between the two? Very good question. So I guess the question is that how do we know if you are being driven to do something, it is being inspired by the super soul, or it's a product of our mind. Now, at a basic level, at a philosophical level, we know that the super soul is spiritual and the mind is material. We know the super soul is Krishna and the mind is just one of the three. Maybe you want to mute the call, Prabhu. I see a lot of sound coming. Okay. So how do we know that something that we are being inspired to do is coming from the material mind or the spiritual super soul? So there are a few ways that we can understand. One thing that we have to understand is that being in contact, coming in contact with the super soul, is a symptom of a very high level of spiritual advancement. So for most of us, we can understand that the activities that we are doing, if we are doing it based on our internal drive, are more likely than not coming from the mind. Just because we are not at the stage where, so I think it's the next verse that talks about samsparsha. Samsparsha meaning, no, it's not the next verse. I think it's the verse after next that talks about samsparsha, which means coming in contact with Krishna. And it's an advanced. So that's the general guidance, that more likely than not, we are being guided by our mind. Now there are some other symptoms also. The super soul will, at least for devotees, will try to inspire them to do more devotional service. The super soul will inspire to serve devotees, serve the deities, to chant. So the impulses that come in our mind that are motivating us to go closer to Krishna are really the symptoms of the influence of the super soul. Because remember that when you take to devotional service, then Krishna becomes partial towards you. So he's no more samoham sarvabhuteshu. Na me dveshasti na priya, but he says that I become partial to my devotees. So what is the symptom of partiality? That unprovoked, Krishna will give you hints. He will give you inspirations or thoughts. And devotees experience that on a regular basis. That they get inspired to improve their sadhana, they get inspired to improve their chanting, and then we can understand that they're coming by the mercy of the super soul. Yet another way to understand is that the super soul is also known as Chaitya Guru. So the Chaitya Guru is externally manifested in your Guru. Whether it's Diksha Guru or Shiksha Guru, they're considered to be the external manifestation of your super soul. So when your Guru is asking you to do something, whether it's Diksha or Shiksha Guru, when they're asking you to do something, then we can understand that this is what our super soul is asking us to do. Okay, thank you for the question. This actually can have much more discussion, but we'll stop in the interest of time. I'll just see if there's any other questions or comments. Okay, so there is a question that I understood that it is always ever fresh when Radha meets Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. So in the spiritual world, whatever we are aspiring for over here, so here we are basically seeing things more symptomatically because we are mostly material, but when there are glimpses of spiritual advancement, then we start seeing that these symptoms of spirituality. One of them being that it is always, they're always new, they're always ever fresh, but in the spiritual world they're fully manifest. So not only the interaction between Radha and Krishna, but the interaction between Krishna and his friends, the interaction between Krishna and his parents, they're ever evolving, ever delectable. Radharani cooks for Krishna every day, and every day she does not repeat a dish. So can you imagine the repertoire of that Radharani has? If you look at her, if you look at the fact that for time immemorial, she's been cooking for Krishna without repeating a dish. What is that a symptom of? That is a symptom of the implicit ever freshness that happens in the spiritual world. Okay, so there's a question that we learn that Krishna has many forms. How to identify other forms of Krishna which we are not aware? There are several acharyas and gurus who have given us so much, who have given so much to us and for future generations. How to visualize them? So Prabhupada talks about this in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He talks about it. So your question is more, I guess, from a devotee perspective, that how do I recognize a form of Krishna? Prabhupada talks about how do you recognize a form that is not of Krishna? And this is basically people who pretend to be God. And this gets spoken about in subsequent verse. But the short answer is that authorized incarnations of Krishna are mentioned in the scriptures. So Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So if the Guru and the Sadhu talk about an incarnation and it is verified in the Shastra, then we know it, and then we see them through the eyes of the scriptures, through the Chakshu Shastra. That different scriptures give excruciating details about the form of Krishna, not only the form of Krishna but also of his associates. So we view it through the eyes of the scriptures. Okay, good. Thank you for all these wonderful questions. Let me continue with the next verse. If I can figure out how to remove this thing that's come. So this is the, okay. Okay. So we'll do verse 19. Vayam tu na vitpryama. No, 19 we did, sorry. We'll do verse 20. कृतवान् किल कर्माणि स रामेण केशवः अतिमृत्यानि भगवान् बुद्धदा कपटमानुषः. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead along with Balram, played like a human being, and so must he performed many superhuman acts. So this is what the sages are anxious to hear. They want to hear about the pastimes of Krishna and Balram. So Srila Sridhar Swami comments that that although the sages were finding the sacrifice to be physically tiring, they still wanted to hear more and more about Krishna. The taste of such katha was insatiable. Why? Because of their intrinsic love for Krishna. So in the verse 17, the sages have put a very similar request that tell us more about Krishna. And this establishes a little bit more context that we want to hear about Krishna and Balram. So these two verses, the previous verse 19 and this verse 20, it essentially is a paraphrase of the third question that was asked by the sages. For what purpose did the personality of Godhead appear in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva? So essentially they are and there is nothing wrong in repetition. Repetition basically indicates emphasis. So just give me 1 minute. Okay. So Srila Jiva Goswami makes this point that the question that was asked in 1112 is being expanded in 1119 and 1120. That tell us more about Krishna and tell us specifically more about the pastimes of Krishna and Balram. So the sages knew that Kali Yuga has begun, so they wanted to hear about the Lord and his activities. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he explains the importance of accepting incarnations on the basis of scriptures. So this to some extent will answer the question that was just asked. So Prabhupada says, the theory that a man becomes God by dint of penance and austerities is very much rampant nowadays, especially in India. Since Lord Ram, Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were detected by the sages and saints to be personality of Godhead, as indicated in revealed scriptures, many unscrupulous men have created their own incarnations. So Prabhupada here he gives what is the quality of a bona fide incarnation. So they were detected by the sages and the saints, by the Guru and the Sadhu, as indicated in the revealed scriptures. So as it is given in the Shastras. But he says that many unscrupulous men have created their own incarnations. So there was one incarnation, and not to mention any name, but there was an incarnation who on his deathbed, he said that I am Ram and I am Krishna. And he died, and suddenly everybody started worshipping him as a combined incarnation of Ram and Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada continues in the purport, this process of concocting an incarnation of God has become an ordinary business, especially in Bengal. Any popular personality with a few traits of mystic powers will display some feat of jugglery and easily become an incarnation of Godhead by popular vote. Lord Shri Krishna was not that type of incarnation. He was actually the personality of Godhead from the very beginning of his appearance. So Prabhupada here, he cautions us from accepting false incarnations if they're not supported by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. He is also cautioning us to not get carried away by mystic powers. So there is a difference between mystic powers and divinity. So mystic powers they are essentially physical material powers. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto 15th chapter, Krishna, he describes 18 mystic powers, 8 major and 10 minor mystic powers that the yogis can develop through the process of austerities. Before that, in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:24:16, it is said that in the lower planets there is a great demon by the name of Maya Danav who possesses 96 demoniac mystic powers that he teaches others. So mystic powers are just they're just abilities. There's a process, you follow it and you get it. It does not make you God, it does not make you even a devotee. It just gives you certain physical abilities. So we should not get carried away by people displaying any kind of mystic power. So Prabhupada also says that Arjuna had asked Krishna to show his universal form. Why? So that he could establish for future generations what is the test that they can put to a person who's claiming to be God in later ages. So similarly, the sages over here, they are asking Suta Goswami to give a list of the incarnations. So that basically will tell the devotees that these are the bona fide incarnations in the past and in the future. Now, of course, Suta Goswami also says that the number of incarnations are infinite. So whereas he talks about the prominent incarnations, for others, we rely on what the scriptures tell us. And both aspects of understanding incarnations is important. It is important to understand when one is not a bona fide incarnation, and it is more equally, if not more important, to understand when there is a bona fide incarnation. So when Krishna came as Swayam Bhagwan, there were very few people on the planet who actually understood him completely. In one of the lectures I was hearing, forget who was saying, but the Prabhu was saying that other than perhaps Bhishma Dev, the 5 Pandavas, and few other sages, nobody really knew about Krishna being the personality of Godhead. And people like Duryodhan, who were envious of him, they were openly critical of him. That's why Krishna in the 4th chapter, he said, Janma karmacha me divyam yome veti tatvata, that one who is able to understand the divinity of my appearance, he becomes eligible for liberation. So both are important. For us to understand what is a bona fide incarnation, and for us to understand what is a fake incarnation. So the sages, out of their attraction to Krishna, are asking to hear his pastimes. So now let us see what is the extent of their attraction. Kalimagatam agyaya kshetresmin vaishnave vayam asina dirga satrena kathayam shaksana hare. Knowing well that the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in this holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. So this is how attracted the sages are. They are prepared to sit down and do Krishna Katha for 1,000 years. So somebody had earlier asked that how long did it take the Bhagavatam to be spoken in Shukratal? And unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. But we know that for 1,000 years, there was Krishna Katha. The recitation of Bhagavatam, the Puranas, the various Vedas, and the sages were willing to sit and hear because of their intense attraction to Krishna. Prabhupada in the purport says that They prepared themselves to hear the pastimes of the Lord over a period of 1000 years. By the example of these sages, one should learn that regularly hearing and recitation of the Bhagavatam is the only way for self-realization. So Prabhupada makes this point because the sages have set that example. So while they're sitting and hearing and listening, not only are they getting self-realized, but they're also setting an example for us. That by regular attendance to Bhagavatam on a daily basis, one will develop their spiritual attraction. So the glory of the Bhagavatam is that it is sweeter than the sweet. That anything that is spiritual is sweet. But because the Srimad Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpa Tarur Kalitam Phalam, it is a ripened fruit. So there is a tree in which the sap is sweet, but the sap is condensed in the fruit and it becomes even sweeter. That's why it says Pibat Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. That the Bhagavatam is sweeter than the sweet, so it attracts us more. And if we reciprocate with the Bhagavatam by doing Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, then our attraction to Krishna and his devotees will immensely increase. So one may ask the question that is that all that we do, that we sit and hear the Bhagavatam? And to some extent, that itself is sufficient. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and because we are in Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we are in line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is goading us to do more. He says, what do you do after you read the Bhagavatam? He says, you preach the Bhagavat. And there is a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita where he says that all those who are born in India should take the responsibility of broadcasting the messages of Sri Krishna. So this is Prabhupada quoting Chaitanya Charitamrita in his purport. Primarily the message of Bhagavad Gita, and when one is well established in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, he can take up the study of Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment and self-realization. So Srila Prabhupada, he was a great proponent of learning and teaching. He did that himself, obviously, and he would over and over. If you see very, very early, when his disciples would come to Srila Prabhupada, he would teach them something and he would immediately say, now that you have learned this, go out and preach. And some of them say, but Prabhupada or Swamiji, we've just been here 2 weeks. We really don't know much of anything. And Prabhupada said, no, don't worry. You preach to the level of your realization. Don't concoct, don't distort. Tell them what I have told you to the level of your realization, and you will be protected. In Madhya Leela 7.128, there is a pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was in his South India yatra. So there was a very pious Brahman, and in the Kurma Kshetra called Kurma Brahman, and he became Srila Prabhupada took rest in his house and became very attached naturally to Mahaprabhu. So with a grasta, but he became so attached to Mahaprabhu that he said, I'm willing to give up everything and I want to travel with you. I just want to be with you. And to him, Krishna, Mahaprabhu, he spoke this famous verse, Yare dekho, tare kao, Krishna Upadesh. That tell everyone that you meet to follow the orders of Krishna. Yare dekho, whoever you see, tare kao, say this thing, Krishna Upadesh. Follow the instructions of Krishna. So that is what Srila Prabhupada did, and that is Prabhupada is asking us to do. And what is the benediction that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives to one who does that? So he says in the very next verse, he says that if you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulative principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. So the Kurma Brahman was very anxious to get the physical association of Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu, he took him to a higher platform. He said, if you preach, two things will happen. One thing is there will be no obstructions. So one of the biggest obstruction for preaching is the material grahastha life. And Kurma Brahman was a grahastha. So his concern was that while I am in this situation, how can I make spiritual advancement? Mahaprabhu said, preach. Then there will be no impediments. And the final benediction that he gives is, you will ultimately see me. And higher than that is that you will never not see me. So I will be always there with you. So Krishna constantly accompanies his preachers. He is constantly protecting them. So in the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, it does not matter whether one lives in a holy place like Vrindavan, Navadvip or Jagannath Puri, or in the midst of European cities where the materialistic way of life is very prominent. If a devotee follows the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he lives in the company of the Lord. Wherever he lives, he converts that place into Vrindavan and Navadvip. That means that materialism cannot touch him. This is the secret of success for one advancing in Krishna consciousness. So this is the Guhyam, the Raj that Krishna and Srila Prabhupada are revealing, that when we preach, we immediately associate with the Lord. We don't have to even to go to a holy place. We don't have to go to Vrindavan or Dwarka or Navadvip. That is the holiest of the holy. But for one who is preaching, the place where he lives in becomes Vrindavan. Why does it become Vrindavan? Because when you preach, Krishna is with you. And wherever there is Krishna, there is Vrindavan. Wherever there is Krishna, Maya Devi is far away. So in whatever situation that we are at, we are working, we are grahasthas, we have busy schedules, but if we take to this process of preaching, that is the strongest protection that we can get against Maya. So Prabhupada concludes saying that by the example of the sages, one should learn that regular hearing and recitation of the Bhagavatam is the only way for self-realization. So we hear and we learn and we recite and we preach. That is the only way for self-realization. Other attempts are simply a waste of time, for they do not give any tangible benefits. Okay, so we will move on to the next verse, which is verse 22. Tvam naha sandrashito dhatra dushtaram nishittitrishtatam kalim sattvaharam pumsham karnadharayavarnavam. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship, for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities in a human being. So after encouraging Sutta Goswami to speak, the sages, they're further encouraging him by showing their dependence on him. So in the previous verses, they're encouraging him to speak, saying that do Krishna Katha, we want to hear. Now they're further increasing Sutta Goswami's commitment to the speaking by saying that we are actually dependent on you. It is said that when somebody becomes dependent on you, then your responsibility to that person increases. Like a child is fully dependent on the mother. If the mother doesn't feed the child will go hungry. If the mother does not give water to the child will go thirsty. But the mother, she might neglect eating herself or drinking herself, but she will never forget to feed the child or to give water to the child. But when the child grows old, then the same mother may not be that attentive, because now the child is not that dependent on the mother. So the sages over here are saying that we are dependent on you. By the will of providence, we have come in contact with you. So please now tell us about the pastimes of Krishna. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the age of Kali is very dangerous for the human being. Human life is simply meant for self-realization, but due to this dangerous age, men have completely forgotten the aim of life. In this age, the lifespan will gradually decrease. People will gradually lose their memory, finer sentiment, strength, and better qualities. A list of the anomalies, a list of the anomalies for this age is given in the 12th canto of this work. And so this age is very difficult for those who want to utilize this life for self-realization. Out of madness, they frankly say there is no need for self-realization because they do not realize that this brief life is but a moment on a great journey towards self-realization. So mark the words that Prabhupada says, that they do not realize that this brief life is but a moment on a great journey towards self-realization. So why is this life but a moment? It is a moment when you compare your lives to the life of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, his one day is 8.4 billion years. Lord Brahma's lifetime is 311 trillion 40 billion years. Compared to that, our life is just a moment. Brahma's life is just a moment for Mahavishnu. He breathes and Brahma appears, he breathes in and Brahma disappears. So can you imagine what our life is in that moment? So people many times think that they have long lives. So in India especially, they have this conception that we will wait to retire to do any spiritual activities. Or if you're taking to it in your youth, they will try and dissuade you, saying, why are you doing this now? Now is the time for you to work hard, make money, take care of your family, amass fame. When you are retired, then you can take to spirituality. But as it is, our life is a moment. Even if we live the full 100 years, our life is but a moment. So Prabhupada is trying to instill in us the sense of urgency. At another place, he says that somebody asked him that when should you start your spiritual practice? And Prabhupada said, in your womb. Not in your womb, in the womb of your mother. And through Garbhoda Samskars, etc., we know that that's when one's spiritual life begins. So Srila Prabhupada, he would often quote this conversation he had in USSR with the professor Kotovsky. So the professor said, after this life, there is nothing. Eat, drink, and be merry. What philosophy? So Prabhupada said, that is the philosophy that they believe in. But a brief moment. So that is the illusion that they create for themselves, that there is no life after this life. And in this life, there is plenty of time. There are so many tomorrows that are there. So what do we do in the present time? We eat, drink, and be merry. So Prabhupada, he expands and he says, what is the biggest impediment for us developing this sense of urgency? What is the biggest impediment for us taking to spirituality in a more systematic, consistent, and timely way? And Prabhupada blames the education system for it. So he says the whole system of education is geared to sense gratification. And if a learned man thinks it over, he sees that the children of this age are being intentionally sent to the slaughterhouse of so-called education. So Prabhupada is obviously feels strongly about it because he is using strong words. He's calling the education system a slaughterhouse. But whatever he is saying is based on the scriptures. The education system is a slaughterhouse because they kill our desires for making spiritual advancement. And how do they kill our desire? Because they show us a different version of the spiritual world, one that is in the material world. They show us that success is ultimately being materially successful. So in the Ishopanishad that is said, this is mantra 9. So this is Prabhupada in the purport. He says that the advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. A cobra decorated with a valuable jewel is more dangerous than one that is not decorated. Because one that is not decorated, you can see that the cobra is dangerous and stay away from it. But one that is a valuable jewel, you become attracted. And when you become attracted, you go close to the cobra and the cobra bites you, and then you are finished. So that is the nature of the current education system, that it paints a phantasmagoria for us. It gives us hope of eternal happiness and success. But when we go into it, it sucks away our desire for spiritual advancement. So there's some discussions that I'm not going to do, but there are some discussions about what are the different gems, what are the different monies on the cobra that attract us, that take us away. So I'm not going to discuss in details, but some of them are modern science and technology. That is the biggest deterrent. It tries to explain away God. And Prabhupada says that all that modern science and technology is giving you a post-dated check. You ask them that when will I become immortal? They will say soon. When you ask them that when will I become free of diseases? They'll say we are working on it. Very soon it will happen. And if they cure one disease, a new disease comes and they will say we are working on it. Soon it will happen. So Prabhupada compares this with like crossing the Pacific Ocean, holding on to the tail of a dog. So it's a colorful analogy, but can you imagine trying to cross the Pacific Ocean, which is so large, and the only support that you have is the tail of a dog. So very little chance of happening. Other deterrent is the modern politicians. So this is here there's a verse that is quoted, a verse that is spoken by Indra, and he says that a stone boat would be unable to float and would sink in water with its passengers. Similarly, those who mislead people go to hell and the followers go with them. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam 6.7.14. And Prabhupada says this describes the situation of modern politicians. That not only are they misguided themselves, they are misguiding the people. The duty of a king is to create conditions that are conducive to the praja to make spiritual advancements. But the current day politicians, they're doing the opposite. They corrupt themselves and they're encouraging the followers to become corrupt. What are some of the other useless boats? Mundane welfare work. That is a big useless boat. So Prabhupada gives the analogy of saving the shirt of a man instead of the man. So when Srila Prabhupada was in London in 1971, he was walking in the park and he saw many hippies lying down everywhere. So he commented on their unfortunate situation. And he said that there is only one way that it can be changed, which is by Krishna consciousness. Because there are people who will come and they will give them food or they might give them some money. But ultimately what they will do is that whatever they get, they will directly or indirectly use to get more drugs. So they will fall deeper into nations. So that is the nature of mundane welfare work. That is like it's like blowing on the boil. It gives temporary welfare, temporary relief, but it does not cure the underlying problem. Some other useless boats. So one of the other big useless word are the impersonalist. So the Mayavadis, they read the Bhagavatam and then they impose their impersonal understanding on the Bhagavatam's glorification of the Supreme Lord. And then they use that to prove that there is either no God or God does not have a form. So here we are qualified that we are fortunate that the boat that we have is a real boat. It's not a stone boat. The speaker is qualified. He's appearing in the disciplic succession. He is a devotee. He has realized bhakti himself. The audience is qualified. The audience that was sitting in Naimisharanya were qualified. The audience that was sitting in Shukratal were qualified. And the audience that are now hearing Bhagavatam are qualified. Because in their hearts they have a desire to make spiritual progress. So So Prabhupada emphasizes again in this verse saying that of course after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam we must preach. So we must not only listen but act on the instructions and actually live the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there is a little bit of a funny situation, a funny incident that happened, that in 74, 75, Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan at the time, and he had a slightly eccentric disciple. The pastime is well known, so I'll tell his name. So his name was Vishal Prabhu. And he was eccentric. He had a particular rasa with Prabhupada. Prabhupada would sometimes tolerate a lot of stuff he did. Sometimes he would chastise him, but he was very, very much attached to Prabhupada. So when he read this verse that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, so he thought that this is a great verse to glorify Prabhupada. So next day when Prabhupada, he stepped out of his apartment room to take a walk, he stood loudly in front of the gate, and then he loudly started reciting the translation of this verse, that we think we have met your goodness by the will of providence. And Prabhupada interrupted him and he said that do something useful. There's a puddle of dirty water, clean it up. So Vishal Prabhu was shocked for a moment, but then he went into the service. But the message that Prabhupada gave was that if you hear something, practically apply it. So Prabhupada's mood was very practical. That don't just read for the sake of mental speculation. Don't just recite for the sake of either followers or for fame, but do it for practically encouraging other people to take to Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada separately he said that it's okay for you can eulogize your Guru Maharaj, but you have to learn it and face the public and be strong to defend yourself. That is success. Not by praising a Guru Maharaj. You'll praise a Guru Maharaj, that is not very difficult, but be victorious to the opposing elements. Then you will praise your Guru Maharaj nicely. At home, you can praise your Guru Maharaj and your Guru Maharaj will be satisfied. Oh, my disciples are praising me. That is good, respectful. That is the qualification. But you have to fight. Then your Guru Maharaj will be glorified. So, real glorification of Guru Maharaj is that when you defend his position. If your Guru Maharaj is preaching, you help him in the preaching. If he is fighting to fight against Maya, to bring more and more people into Krishna consciousness, that becomes your fight. And that is the real glorification of the Guru Maharaj. So we have one more verse, and I am actually going to break my own rule of leaving 15 minutes for questions. I will complete this verse because this is the last verse of the first chapter. So then I just want to continue with the second verse, and this is a short verse. Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne Brahmanaye Dharma Varmani Swam Kastham Adunopete Dharmakam Sharanam Gata. Since Sri Krishna, the absolute truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. So this is the sixth and the last question that is placed by the sages to Sutta Goswami, that now that Krishna has departed to his own abode, where will aspiring spiritualist take shelter? So if you notice, they have described Krishna as Yogeshwara, as the master of mystics, to show that him departing to his own abode is not like our departing to whatever abode. He is Yogeshwara, he is master of the mystics. Everything that he has done is basically by his own mystic powers. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, essentially, religion is the prescribed codes enunciated by the personality of Godhead himself. So there's a verse in the Bhagavatam that comes in the Ajmail pastime, Dharmam tu Sakshat Bhagavad Pranitam, where Yamraj tells the Yamdutas that religion is essentially given by the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada continues in the purport, whenever there is a gross misuse or neglect of the principles of religion, the Supreme Lord appears himself to restore religious principles. So this part of the purport, Prabhupada is basing on the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya 4.7. Here the sages of Naimisharanya are inquiring about these principles. So they are predicting that the age of Kali, Dharma will be mitigated. So they are asking for the principles that will help to make spiritual advancements. The reply to this question is given later. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a transcendental sound representation of the personality of Godhead, and thus it is the full representation of transcendental knowledge and religious principle. So the sages, they're feeling separation from Krishna and they're seeking shelter. So the question is, where do we take shelter? And the question for us is that even though we may not be facing separation from Krishna, the question for us is, as aspiring spiritualist, where do we take shelter? And the question is answered in 1.343. Krishna, that once Krishna has departed, the Srimad Bhagavatam has risen as the brilliant sun, and it is accompanied with the ability to give us the shelter that Krishna would give us. So it has the same ashraya capability that Krishna has, but it is better than Krishna because it is always present with us. Just like the holy name is better than Krishna because it is easily accessible, the Srimad Bhagavatam is better than Krishna because it is not only easily accessible, it is ever present. It is there on our shelves, it is there in our laptops or our phones. All we need to do is open it and read it on a regular basis. So I'll stop over here, and this is the ending of the first canto, first chapter. Next class we'll do a little bit of analysis of the 6 questions again. So they were kind of spread out, so we'll do them together so that we can understand the trend of the questions, and we will then start with the second chapter, which is one of the very, very interesting chapters because it talks about devotional service. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, my obeisances.
Prabhu, like you told, only few realized Krishna, know Krishna as God when Mahabharata happened, all that. But so like everybody who saw Krishna while dying in Mahabharata Yuddha, there is no like one who dies by seeing Krishna should achieve Krishna, right? Probably, yeah, like the same principle with Putana. Like she wanted to, serve as a mother to Krishna, so she has got liberated. Like this, by the same principle of absoluteness, all these people who saw Krishna while dying should also achieve this thing, or it's like they will have one more birth to serve as a devotee and then they'll go back, or it's like they'll get a Sahaja Mukti. That is one question. Probably, if you allow me, the other question is like there are so many other devotees. So it's, you are telling only few recognize him as God. So that is second part of question. How is it only those 5 or no other people were there? You were telling that Naimisharanya, all the rishis, they were also would be present when Krishna was there.
Okay. Thank you. Both are good questions. So first question is that when people died in the presence of Krishna, did they achieve Krishna? So one way to understand is that achieving Krishna can never be a mechanical process. So just by the mechanical process of dying in front of Krishna, one cannot achieve Krishna. The gates to Krishna have have a lock, and there is only one key that opens that lock, which is pure devotional service. So one cannot aspire to achieve Krishna through any mechanical means, whether dying at a certain point of time. Some people say if we die at Vrindavan, we'll go back to Krishna. We'll die in Mayapur, we'll go back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it mitigates the whole process of bhakti. Now, having said that, those who die at the hand of Krishna, or those who died while meditating or looking upon Krishna, they were liberated. But where they went was very much dependent. So it's like we are doing bhakti. So where we go after we die depends very much on our situation. If you're fortunate, we may go back to Krishna Loka, or we may go to some other planet where we assist somebody in their devotional service and make progress ourselves. It all depends on what is our situation. So when the asuras are killed, who are inimical to Krishna, when they're killed by Krishna, they achieve Sayujya Mukti, which is that they go into the impersonal Brahman, they stay there for some time, and then they come back into the material world and resume their lives. Now, people like Putana and Shishupal, they did achieve Krishna, but not because of them being killed by Krishna, but because they were already situated in a certain mood. So Putana in the previous life was the daughter of Bali Maharaj, and when she saw Vamandev, then her heart filled with love for Krishna or Vamandev, and it became so strong in her that she said that if only I could have this wonderful child as my baby and give milk. And later on, when Vamandev took away everything from Bali Maharaj, she became angry, and she said that for such a child, I would smear poison on my breast and feet. And Krishna, he gave both the benedictions to him. So because Krishna willed it, Putna had the position of being returning to the spiritual world and becoming one of the assistants of Yashodamai. So similarly, Shishupal. That Shishupal, who was he in his previous birth? He was Jay, who was the doorkeeper, and the Dwapar Yuga was the third incarnation, after which his curse ended. So in the 6th canto, we see how Yudhishthira mentions that how did Shishupal enter into the body of Krishna? And understanding is that he was a pure devotee. He was cursed. The tenure of the curse ended, so he went back and resumed his position. So I'm trying to give you, I guess, the lesson in the question that you asked is very nice. The lesson that I do want to share with you is that we will acquire that aspect of Krishna that we aspire for and work for. There are no shortcuts. There are no mechanical processes. There is no way that we can fool the system. So there is only one path to Krishna, that is through the path of devotion. The second question that you asked, and you have to forgive me, Prabhu, I forgot. Can you quickly just give me?
Nothing, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for the answer. You told only few devotees, but what about the other devotees who are present in Naimisharanya? Even though the regular people will be present in the ordinary places, the devotees and the rishis in Naimisharanya.
Right. So few means there were a handful of people. It doesn't mean that only the Pandavas saw and only Bhishma Dev saw, but given the fact there were millions and millions of people, there were only a few people who understood Krishna's real position. Even in the assembly at Naimisharanya, there were all varieties of sages. There were sages who were atheistic. There were sages who were materialistic. There were sages who were impersonalist. So that is why when Parishit Maharaj put the question to them that what is the duty of a person and what is the duty of a person who's about to die, they were not able to come to an answer because they were representing so many different philosophies, and that's why Sukadeva Goswami came and spoke. So even though it was Dwapar Yuga, well, end of Dwapar, it was still Dwapar Yuga, and even though they were exalted people, but developing this realization that Krishna is the personality of Godhead, and even like sometimes we say that how could they not have recognized Krishna when they came face to face with him? But we have personal experience of that every day. Every day when we chant, we come face to face with Krishna. Every day when we read the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam or we go to the temple, we come face to face with Krishna. So we have personal experience with that, and we are in the category that we are sincerely trying to make that advancement. We are sincerely trying, but still we are not able to make that connection. So these were people who, from different philosophical backgrounds, some knew and some did not. Some considered Krishna to be a powerful mystic, like Karna. He considered Krishna to be a very powerful mystic, and some considered Krishna just to be a cheater, like Duryodhana. They said that you have some skills, but unfortunately you use it to cheat people. So just like over here, even at that time, the understanding of Krishna consciousness was predicated on a person's own spiritual advancement. So a nice question. We still have some time. Any other questions? No, actually we are out of time. Sorry, I was looking at something else. So we'll end over here. Vancha kalpatarubhishchit kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo, Hare Krishna.